Hold the line, man. Yeah, come get some. Just like shooting fish in a barrel. Hello everybody. Today I'm making a video about a game that's been close to my heart for a while. I've been playing it for many hours and I've decided that I finally want to do something and share this game with the world to try to get as many people to play it as possible. There are a lot of World War II games. You have the massive AAA franchises like Call of Duty and Battlefield. You have the hardcore milsims like Hell Let Loose and Squad 44, and then you have the strategy games, the flight simulators, the tank games, and everything in between. But somehow, one of the best World War II games I've ever played is one that barely anyone seems to be talking about. It's called Easy Red 2, and it's the reason I'm making this video. Now, at a first glance, it really doesn't look like much. The graphics aren't going to compare with a $200 million AAA production. The animations can occasionally look a little rough, and there are quite a few unpatched bugs. But then you actually play it, and then you realize that underneath all of that is one of the most ambitious, content-packed, and genuinely fun World War II shooters you've played in years. Easy Red 2 was officially released in November 2020. It's an indie World War II shooter developed by Marco Amadei and his studio, Corvo Studio. And while the term indie often comes with the assumptions of a smaller, more limited game, that description doesn't really do Easy Red 2 justice, because the scope of what this game is trying to achieve is surprisingly ambitious. If you've played Battlefield 1942, Battlefield 2, Battlefield 2142, Arma 3, or Ravenfield, you'll probably recognize the basic concept immediately. These games all share the same core idea: large-scale sandbox battles where AI-controlled soldiers, vehicles, and aircraft fight alongside you and against you. The problem is that all of the older Battlefield games have long since been abandoned and are no longer officially available for purchase. So in 2026, if you want an easily accessible FPS built around large-scale battles with AI-controlled soldiers, the options are surprisingly limited. And Easy Red 2 is the only one of these games specifically built around World War II. So, what exactly is the concept? Instead of playing as some unstoppable hero, you play as an ordinary soldier. You choose a theater of war, a campaign like Stalingrad for example, and then you work your way through the various historical battles to unlock them. You're surrounded by AI-controlled soldiers fighting alongside you and against you. And you're not simply moving from one scripted encounter to the next. You are part of the battlefield. Infantry squads are advancing and falling back around you. Tanks are engaging each other across the map. Artillery is pounding enemy positions. Aircraft are passing overhead. Objectives are changing the flow of the battle. And crucially, the battle doesn't revolve around you. You can literally leave the game running without pausing it, walk away from your computer, and the fighting will continue until one side eventually wins. And that's what makes Easy Red 2 so interesting. You're not controlling the entire battle, you're simply dropped into the middle of it. You're not the hero of the war. You're not a one-man army. You're just one soldier caught up in something much bigger than yourself. And when everything comes together, the infantry, the tanks, the artillery, the aircraft, the chaos, it genuinely feels less like you're playing through a level and more like you're experiencing a battle. One of the biggest reasons I think Easy Red 2 stands out is because you can actually feel the passion behind it. This isn't a great studio with hundreds of developers and an enormous budget. It's essentially a passion project that has continued to grow for years. That's something I really appreciate, because there are so many games today where you can immediately tell that you're looking at a product designed around monetization, retention, battle passes, cosmetics, or whatever the current industry trend happens to be. Easy Red 2 feels different. It feels like someone wanted to make a really good World War II game and then just kept adding things. And that brings me to one of the game's biggest strengths, the amount of content. The base game is normally around €8.99, and during sales it can drop as low as €3.24. That is ridiculously cheap for what you're getting. And then there are the DLCs. But here's the main thing. These aren't the kind of DLCs where you get 3 skins, a weapon pack, and a couple of maps. Every major Easy Red 2 expansion actually adds another theater of World War II. You've got Stalingrad, Normandy, Ardennes 1940 and 1944, Shanghai Nanking, and the newest expansion released in July 2026, Blood on the Danube, which takes the game to Hungary during the final stages of the war. And these expansions don't just give you new maps, they add new factions, weapons, vehicles, uniforms, missions, environments, and entire campaigns. For example, the Shanghai Nanking DLC takes the game somewhere that most World War II games completely ignore, the Second Sino-Japanese War. It adds Chinese and Japanese forces, new weapons and vehicles, and more than 20 missions. And the Blood on the Danube takes you to Hungary for some of the final battles of the Eastern Front, Hitler's last assault. What other game lets you play as the Hungarians or Romanians in World War II? There isn't any other. That is the thing I really appreciate about these expansions. They're not simply padding out the game, they're expanding what the game actually is. And if you bought everything at full price, the total package is around €36.84, while sales can bring that down dramatically up to half price. For the amount of World War II content here, that's difficult to complain about. Keep in mind, I'm not even being paid to say nice things about this game. I just really like it, although I wouldn't mind being sponsored, so Corvo Studios, hit me up. Another thing that makes Easy Red 2 different is how it handles squads. You're not necessarily playing as one immortal super soldier, you're part of a squad. If you want to play as a regular soldier, you can. Your squad leader will give you orders on where to attack. But if you want to take charge of your squad, you can. You can tell your men to charge with you into an objective or hop into a truck and flank the objective. You can also switch between members of that squad at will and when one soldier dies, which is nice so you don't have to waste any time waiting for a respawn before getting back into the action. It's similar to the game called Enlisted in that way, but of course much better. It's not a hardcore military simulation, but it creates this really nice middle ground between an arcade shooter and a military sandbox. This is the part of Easy Red 2 that I think deserves the most attention, the scale. You can be sitting in a trench while artillery is exploding around you. Then a tank rolls past, then an aircraft flies overhead, then the infantry start advancing. Then somebody starts firing a machine gun from a building 100 meters away. And somewhere behind you another part of the battle is happening that you aren't even directly involved in. That's what makes it feel like a battlefield rather than a shooting gallery. You aren't always the center of attention, you're just one soldier in a much bigger fight, and when everything lines up it can look absolutely incredible. You'll have moments where you're advancing through a village while tanks are moving alongside you. You'll see a distant artillery barrage hit the enemy position. You'll watch an enemy aircraft fly over the battlefield, and then 5 seconds later, you're fighting through a house. It's chaotic, it's messy, and that's exactly why I like it.
What do we want with eggs and ham? Ripping up plum and apple jam.
Easy Red 2 isn't afraid of going beyond the usual list of World War II battles, because, let's be honest, when most people think about World War II games, they think about Normandy, Stalingrad, maybe the Ardennes. And there's nothing wrong with that. We've only been shown these theaters of war by Hollywood in famous movies and TV shows like Band of Brothers, Saving Private Ryan, and Enemy at the Gates. But there was an absolutely enormous global war happening outside of those theaters, and Easy Red 2 actually explores some of it. Easy Red features some of the North Africa, Italian, early war French, Hungarian, and Chinese campaigns. Shanghai Nanking is a particularly good example. You're suddenly looking at World War II featuring Japanese forces with their own weapons, uniforms, vehicles, and environments. And that's something you don't see very often. It gives the game a sense of historical variety that I think is missing from a lot of World War II shooters. The newest DLC, Blood on the Danube, does something similar by focusing on the fighting in Hungary in 1944 and 1945. These aren't exactly the battles that dominate the gaming industry, and that's precisely why they're interesting. Now, I'm not going to pretend Easy Red 2 is perfect. It isn't. The biggest weakness is probably polish. Some animations can feel stiff, some interactions aren't as smooth as you'd expect from another modern shooter. The AI can sometimes do some very questionable things, and visually you can tell this is an indie production. There are moments where a soldier will do something that makes you stop and think, yeah, okay. And the game doesn't always have the cinematic presentation of something like Call of Duty, but I actually think this is where people can misunderstand the game. You shouldn't judge it purely by how polished it looks, because if you do that, you miss what makes it special, and personally, I think it gives off a lot of charm. Easy Red 2 is a game where the mechanics and gameplay are doing most of the heavy lifting. Its maps are huge, there are multiple objectives, there are vehicles, there are different classes, there are destructible environments, there are artillery strikes, there are aircraft, there are huge numbers of AI soldiers fighting around you, and all of those systems interact with each other. That's why the game can produce moments that simply can't be scripted. You might be advancing towards an objective and suddenly a tank appears. You might be defending a position and have artillery fire upon you, wreaking havoc. You might be trying to cross a road when an enemy machine gun opens up. There are just so many different scenarios that make you react in different ways. And every once in a while, the game produces one of those completely unscripted moments that you remember long after you stop playing and make you come back for more. I know that's what makes me coming back for more. I have 200 hours in the game so far, and I know that there'll be many, many more in the future to come. That's something I value much more than graphical fidelity, because a game can look incredible, but if I forget everything that happened 5 minutes after playing, what's the point? Easy Red 2 has given me plenty of moments that I can actually remember. Perhaps the best thing about Easy Red 2 is that it's still growing. Apart from the new DLCs, the game is receiving major updates alongside it, sort of like the redemption arc that No Man's Sky had through updates. That's pretty impressive for a game that originally launched back in 2020, and just proves that the developer Marco is 100% committed to improving this game, which just makes me want to keep playing to see what he'll add. It's also worth noting that Easy Red 2 has a very active Discord community where they regularly listen to the community's feedback, requests, and bug reports. They also host votes to decide what they'll add to the game next. That's a big part of the appeal for me. Despite being relatively unknown compared with the other major World War II shooters, it has built a dedicated community that keeps coming back. At the time of recording, Easy Red 2 is seeing roughly 1,000 plus concurrent Steam players and receives peaks that have climbed into the thousands, with the game's July 2026 peak reaching over 3,000 concurrent players following the new content. And that brings us back to the title of this video. Why is nobody talking about this game? I think part of the answer is pretty simple. It doesn't look like a AAA game. There's no massive marketing campaign behind it, no enormous publisher pushing advertisements everywhere, no recognizable franchise attached to the name, and honestly, Easy Red 2 is a pretty terrible name. Seriously, if you told someone there was a World War II shooter called Easy Red 2, I wouldn't blame them for assuming it was some obscure mobile game. But once you actually look past the name and the visuals, there's a genuinely impressive game here. And I think that's why it has built such a loyal community, because the people who discover it tend to realize pretty quickly that there's much more here than expected. If you want a cinematic Call of Duty campaign where every second is carefully scripted, then this game probably isn't for you. If you want the extreme realism and simulation of something like Hell Let Loose, you might find Easy Red 2 too arcade-like. But if you want something in between, a game where you can jump into massive World War II battles, play alongside AI squads, drive tanks, use artillery, explore different theaters, play solo or cooperatively, and just create your own World War II stories, then this is absolutely worth looking at, especially if you're someone who's very into World War II history, as this game is extremely historically accurate. Because the base game is so cheap, there's really not much risk in it. Easy Red 2 isn't the prettiest World War II game, it isn't the most realistic, it isn't the most famous, and it definitely isn't the most polished, but I think it might be one of the most genuine World War II games currently available. It's clearly made by people who love the subject. It keeps expanding. Its DLCs actually add meaningful content. It explores theaters that most games completely ignore, and most importantly, it's fun. For less than 10 euros, you can get into a game that gives you huge battlefields, infantry combat, tanks, aircraft, artillery, multiple campaigns, single player, co-op and multiplayer, and then when their sales come around, you can get the base game for just a few euros. That's an insane amount of game for the price. So is Easy 2 perfect? No. But I don't think it needs to be, because sometimes you don't need the biggest studio, the biggest budget, or the most impressive graphics. Sometimes you just need a developer who clearly cares about making the game they want to make. And after years of updates, new campaigns, new theaters, and new content, Easy Red 2 has become exactly that. A giant World War II sandbox hiding inside a tiny indie game. And honestly, I think more people should know about it. So, if you've never heard of Easy Red 2 before, now you have. And maybe the best World War II game that nobody is talking about won't be so unknown anymore. Thanks for watching, and have a good rest of your day. Bye bye now. With